This episode of the podcast is really interesting. It's an American guy who was born and raised in Taiwan and who went to the same school that I teach at in Taichung, a Christian school. So we talk in this podcast about what it's like growing up as a foreigner in Taiwan, about being raised Christian, about Christian philosophy, as we both were from Christian families. And we just have a good time vibing. We also have a few instances of exploding beers throughout the episode, so we talk about that, just about beers. I've actually held on to this podcast for a few months. I met the guy in the spring and filmed this interview shortly after, but just the editing process for the podcast is so daunting. It can take 4, 5, 6 hours of hard work to do the editing, especially if I want to make a trailer out of these videos. So this time, because only my mom watches the podcast, shout out mom, I figured I would do some minimal editing and just throw it up as is rather than have it lost to history. One other note, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Isaac, throughout the podcast. It was a really cool interview. Sometimes I have trouble keeping my mouth shut when I'm in the presence of greatness, so something to work on. That's it. Hope you enjoy. It's in Taiwan or?
In the States.
Okay, where at?
In Ohio.
Okay.
And it was a light beer. It was like almost like a lager or like a white ale, but it was a coffee beer.
I've had coffee beers before. I think they were kind of,
most of the time, most of the time coffee beers are like dark, you know? They're like
very much, yeah. It's
super
like
dark.
It's kind of like a coffee-ish like, Guinness or like a stout.
This is the thing. This one's like
it's a coffee lager.
It's like bright and it's like
strange.
It's like clear and it's only like 5%, and it's just like the most refreshing like coffee drink I've ever had, and it's coffee beer. It's called Cool Beans.
It's amazing.
And really the reason why it's seasonal is because they always find different beans to experiment with. But like more or less, it's always just like a very like refreshing, brisk like coffee beer. And it's weird because it's like usually you see like dark coffee beers.
I've only had coffee beers a couple times and they turned me off, but they were really dark. They were really stouts. Really, they're like there's like breakfast ones or like oatmeal stouts or things like that.
But yeah, Cool Beans is just like it's hard to explain without tasting it, but it's like it's refreshing. Like
interesting. So that would be
like
the one. That's like the love of your life in terms of beers.
Well, it's because I miss it the most. Just the memory of like being there. They had like this big back patio, and then they had Power Hour, which was like a craft brewery, and for like from 7 to 8, they would sell like half of their beers for like $2.
Oh, dope.
And it was at a college campus, and all the college kids would just like run over.
You went to school in Ohio?
Yeah.
Okay, we're recording now, by the way.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Where did you go to school in Ohio? I'm sure we talked about this, but the thing is, we met one time, talked for some hours, but it was mostly bullshitting 6 weeks ago or something. So it was a really cool night, but I don't remember.
Bet, by the way?
I don't remember. What was the bet we made? It was we were taking claims on the different ways that people could get injured in this Airbnb house party, including there's 2 floors. One of them had, and the only way to get up to the second floor was a ladder.
Yeah.
A fucking ladder at a party where people are drunk.
And there was also that table that had.
Yeah, there's a table on wheels. It didn't look like was on wheels. It surprised you. Like touched it, like moved around a little bit. But in any case, you're from Ohio, kind of. I'm from Michigan. I don't know.
So, kind of my background is like, I went to Christian American school in Taiwan my whole life, and probably around the time of high school, I was like kind of over it.
Okay.
And I was like, I really, really, really want to go to like public school, just like out of.
Was it the private thing, the Christian thing, the American thing, the Taiwan thing?
I think it was just.
Because to be fair,
at that point I was still a Christian.
Okay.
I just was very like upset and like dissonant from all of like the structures that were within the Christian school.
Got it.
That,
it's
like,
pretty,
I just wanted to learn.
Enforced, right?
Yeah, and I just wanted to learn a little more objectively and a little more like.
They have mandated like religion class, like prayer services. All the trappings, you sing hymns and things like that.
We had chapel every Wednesday. 2 weeks out of the year, we would have Spiritual Life Week, where we'd have chapel every day for a week, and we'd have a guest speaker. And it would be like so many different types of people.
Sounds like a summer camp.
Yeah, but it'd be like during school.
Kind of like that? Okay.
Bible classes, and then I lived in the dorms in high school, and then we'd have Bible studies.
You mean at Morrison?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have Bible studies after that, and so it's structured. And then also just like, I just wanted to like, you know, be able to discuss things with people without being like, oh, you just have to like have
like
faith.
not just like openly and
Yeah.
like talk about things.
Yeah.
You weren't
in a
like,
way where it's like, hey, I have these doubts, and instead of people being like, well, you just gotta trust it. Like people would actually like, you know, break it down and like kind of explain or like their thought process, and also just like being okay with being like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
And I kind of needed that, so I was like, I don't want to be in Christian school anymore. But my parents were like, hey, you've never lived in the States before. If you're gonna go to the States,
yeah,
we prefer you to like go to a Christian school.
You like just keep you from the ways of the devil. That's a good call, man. Like there's not a lot of devil stuff to get into in Taiwan. In America, there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff that happen in America.
This is also a really funny story. I'll get to it, but so basically I just put off all my college apps. I was about to apply to 2 or 3 schools. My parents are like, look, it's not a Christian school, then we're not going to pay for the tuition, for the admission fee.
For real, okay.
The application fee.
This was for university, right?
Yeah,
for college, okay.
For the application fee. It was like, if you get in, we might help, but like you're going to have to pay for the application fee. And I didn't really have any money.
Okay.
So, and it's like, what, $75 a pop, so...
if you're hitting 5 or 6 schools.
And so I decided like my act of rebellion would be to not complete any of my college applications.
Oh.
Just not fill
No.
them. And then I was like, well, at the end of the school year, like more towards the summer, someone was like, hey, you would really fit in to Columbus, Ohio, and you can basically walk into the community college and like do your first 2 years of school without.
Was it someone like from there? Like
It was,
okay.
It was a teacher I really respected.
Awesome.
Do you mind if I smoke?
Awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah. Who
you can't
was
pass second through smoke here.
He was my world religions teacher who like taught things in a this perspective of like, I'm so Christian, but I'm also going to teach this as objectively as I can. So that kind of like influenced me, and I like trusted her like judgment. And I was like, well, I don't really have anything else to do.
Yeah.
And I do want to go to college.
Did you have any relation to Columbus before that, or was it just like a teacher's random recommendation?
Well, my parents are from the Midwest.
Okay.
They're from Indiana.
It's nearby.
Yeah, and I've always felt like that affinity or like that attraction to like the Midwest, certain people or culture.
Okay.
Because it's something.
It's kind of your parents' thing, like your family's thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of the culture. Yeah, I feel it.
And so I was like, well, that's a compromise. Like, and the same teacher was like, you should go to this church too. And my parents are like, well, if you're going to a church, then you can go to the school. And the church ended up being like one of the worst experiences of my life.
For real?
Yeah.
What kind of, because I don't know a whole lot about the churches in Taiwan. I've been to a couple, kind of randomly, but I've never like been to one properly. Did your family go to church?
Yeah.
Here in Taiwan?
My dad's a pastor.
For real?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my parents have Chinese names.
Okay.
But the only way they're referred to is 被牧师, 被师母.
Were you born here or when as a kid?
Yeah.
Okay. So born here until college.
Till high school.
In Taiwan?
Yeah.
Crazy.
I spent 2nd grade in the States.
What kind of reactions do you normally get when you tell that to people? Like first impressions?
That's something I've been trying to figure out.
Have probably like a ton of like stereotypes, like 10 questions you've heard a million times in your life.
I've been trying to like experiment with like how when people ask me where I'm from.
Yeah. How you deal with that,
But it
right?
goes full circle every time. Like, one, I'd be like, oh, I'm from Ohio. And then they ask more questions, and then they're like, oh.
And then you got to get to the backstory
and then I'm like,
behind it.
oh, wait, I'm actually from Taiwan. But then if I'm from Taiwan, they're like, oh, where are you really from?
Yeah.
And so there's no way around it, but sometimes when I like meet someone really cool, I like don't want to disclose the Taiwan information, because sometimes I've noticed that like, because we do that,
people like
talk about
invite you to do like random like interviews like the second time you meet.
Well, no, this is cool, but
okay.
We like talk about me, and then we don't actually talk about anything that we connect with. And then,
like it's not so organic. Like
and then the conversation ends, and then we don't know where to go from there. And then I'm like, I really want to be your friend.
Yeah.
But we kind
of. You don't know how to like pivot. It's kind of like.
We don't have like any building blocks now, because we just talked about like my weird
Which is your weird background is fine, but you'd rather save it until you have some context of your friendship, some kind of foundation, at least the conversation can go somewhere. Yeah.
But and
for Taiwanese and foreign people, same, American same, or is it kind of different?
Well, Taiwan, it's when people are like asking why I can speak Chinese.
Yeah.
Well, then I usually tell them it's because I grew up in Taiwan.
Oh, and then it's just okay. Makes sense. Cool.
But I think that happened more when I lived in the States. Or it's like, in the States, it's like, oh, which high school did you go to? Or like, were you in marching band? Or like, all these like things. I always felt so like disconnected because like I looked the part, but I just like.
Do you know your school doesn't have a baseball team?
Yeah, we have 2 baseball fields.
How crazy! There's 2 baseball fields for real. What are they for?
Do they still have baseball fields?
I have no idea. I never see like the sports area. But I know, like I asked my kids, they're like they have no baseball team. Well, America and Taiwan's #1 sport.
We have middle school softball.
That's close.
Yeah.
Close enough with that.
Yeah, we only have soccer and basketball and volleyball.
I teach at his former school.
And so, but then again, like, my identity is just so like in between, and as in like, I understand that like white privilege and like Western culture is super pervasive in all of the world.
Yeah.
And so I still
American culture.
Well, even Western culture, even European culture too.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know that like there's probably some privileges that I've gotten away with growing up that other people haven't experienced, but I was still growing up as a minority in a country that I wasn't the majority. And so it's just like kind of this hard like identity thing, especially because Taiwan's not an immigrant culture.
Yeah, it's pretty homogenous, right? Like it's pretty much like Han Chinese people. That's the vast majority of what's happening here.
Well, I think that's what they want to think, but Taiwan is kind of a melting pot with like Hakka people.
So Aborigines, right?
Yeah. Well, Hakka is another like people group from mainland China.
Okay.
And they're not as homogenous as they think. I think. But it is like you have to be born here, or you're
much more so from than the U.S., which is like the stereotypical melting pot. It is the melting pot country, so it's hard to get more melting pot than America. Granted,
but I don't even know if I like the word melting pot. It's more like a
whatever it is.
Mixed
look. Whatever it is, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people from different places there, right? Whereas in Taiwan, like most people have similar language and traditions and culture. They look similar. They have similar DNA.
Yeah. And that was the thing in like high school, middle school, like my identity issue, or like these people, I would always be an outsider, always like be American, even though like these people who would tell me that, I would have lived in Taiwan longer than they would have.
Right.
And it was like.
You mean people from China or?
Just my peers.
Relationship or how things changed with you and the religion.
So I think like. To be honest, like, I just, like, whenever I thought about, like, one of the first things you learn about, like, in, like, the Christian faith is that we are imperfect, flawed, sinful human beings. And, like, right off the bat, like, you're imperfect. And for me, like, the dissonance started happening, like, one of many doubts was just, like, I'm an imperfect being trying to understand this perfect thing. How can I be the one to say what is right or wrong when I'm trying to understand something that I can never ever completely understand because I'm imperfect? It's like sometimes it's
a non-starter. Like you can't win.
Yeah, and also like I like living in like in an evangelical background. I see people who like exemplify like what the gospel means in the simplest way, who aren't Christian more so than most of the other people that I've experienced, like when my parents would visit church or like family members and stuff like that.
Right. But it could be a selection bias too, right? Because you're probably more likely to hang out with people that you like, who are like good people. People who are like genuine and like have a good heart and are full of love. So you might meet those people more because that's what
Yeah, and they have different backgrounds of like spiritual beliefs.
Yeah.
And so like this is the analogy that I sometimes use, but like. I have to like look into how, but like think about like antibacterial soap.
Okay, I love it. I love it. I already love it.
It kills like 99.99% of all the bacteria, but it doesn't kill 100% of the bacteria. Yeah. Which means it's never gonna reach perfection. It's never gonna like actually do what it needs to do because that bacteria is gonna grow back and it's not gonna be perfect. And so like think about it, like even if we were so close to perfection, we still wouldn't be able to understand what that perfection is. And for me, I was like, I don't know, and I think I'm okay with not knowing because like this is something that's really, really hard to understand. And it's not to say that I'm like giving up, but I'm also just trying to find comfort in the fact that like it's okay.
But that was one of your first doubts, you're saying, that like you just understood that we have this difference, like you're trying to understand like the like fabric of like existential reality, and then you're just a person. And just that disconnect, because that's interesting. Like I used to be a Christian. I'm also like not, although it's complicated, right?
Yeah.
And I've met many people who have been in the same place, even in like cults or like Mormonism or something a little bit more hardcore, you know. And then they become, I guess, secular, right? I've never heard this reason though. I've heard many reasons why people have doubted things. Never this. Never like I'm not perfect enough to get it, so I give up.
I'm not giving up though. I'm just saying that like.
But it made something.
No, but it's more so like. Who am I to be the one to say that this is the right path? And
so you're not saying it's wrong. You're just saying, how can I say it's right?
And then I see like a lot of like the methods or like the structures within Christianity that probably do more harm than good.
It's okay.
And and that all like that added onto that makes me feel like I can tell people like what I think is good to be a good person. And I can try to show that and like show that to other people, but I can't tell them that they're gonna go to hell. I can't tell them that they're the way to get to heaven. And I can't tell them that.
Do you think there could be some kind of a Christian who, like, for example, like doesn't tell other people they're Christian, who doesn't go to church, who doesn't read the Bible?
I won't tell.
Okay. No, it's very much just here. You work on this. But be careful. I would do whatever you need for a while. These other ones exploded.
I think.
Dude, it's gotta explode.
How did that happen?
I have no idea, man. There was no point where I like shook these up. They weren't in a car. They weren't in a bike. They weren't in a backpack. I took them from must have been before I got them. I took them from the place to my house. That's it.
And I think it's just because of my background too. I've met so many people that. It's hard for me to be like, I have the one thing to say to save other people.
But so what you're talking about right now, a lot of it is like about you proselytizing, right? Or like you trying to convince other people. But that's not the same as like your personal belief, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing where it's like, I still believe that like my background has made me the person that I am.
Definitely.
And I'm not someone who's gonna reject that.
Yeah.
But I also know that like.
And you like the Bible. Would you to some people would you say you're a Christian?
No.
Never. Okay.
I just think that a lot of the systems and methods in place are a lot more harmful, or the beliefs even are a lot more harmful to people's well-being.
Beliefs.
Well, like just the way that they like some people interpret the Bible and stuff.
Yeah, in a lot of different ways.
More harmful to like their well-being and their spiritual.
I love this fucking beer geyser.
And their spiritual well-being than it is to just like love them. Completely while knowing that you're also like a flawed human being.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And I was like.
I don't know. I think this method about like tapping on things works on cans. I don't know if it works on.
Well, there's this thing that I learned that you can turn the can really slowly.
Dude, I'm gonna maybe try all kinds of turn it really slow. But there can't be much air in here though.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what you do with cans though.
Yeah, these are not even like normal glass. These are. You think this is just normal glass but painted? Must be. Because it looks like it's like on the outside it looks like ceramic or something.
I thought it was ceramic.
I think it's painted glass.
I love like
a little bit less fancy than it looks.
I love like one of the first times I realized I was back in Taiwan.
You have those moments like I'm in Asia.
Yeah.
You sometimes forget it for a second.
And I was drinking at the park and smoking, and I had this like half of like those little bottles of whiskey.
Yeah.
Like half drunk, just sitting in front of me. And in the States, you can't drink publicly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not cool.
And
almost anywhere.
a security guard comes up to us, looks at me, looks at the whiskey, looks at me, like, you can't smoke here. I thought I was gonna take it or something.
Yeah, well, in the States, I mean, depending on the city, you definitely could. I've never, in America, I think I've never drank in public. I don't think I've ever, I mean, maybe like a beer, like in someone's yard, but not a whole lot more than that. Like if it's off someone's property, not a whole lot more than that. But I don't know how much traveling you've done in the States. I mean, I went to New Orleans last summer with my sister. Mm-hmm. And that's one of
the only places, yeah?
Oh, one of the only places, yeah. The whole city is open carry is fun. You just drink wherever you want, and everyone does drink wherever they want. It's not only legal, but people take advantage of it. It's a very alcoholic city.
Going back to what I was saying, is just seeing some of the methods that people use religion. It could even be religion in its own sense, not even Christianity, to do more harm than good.
That's not what I'm curious about, because once again, many people, even non-religious people, think religion can be good for a lot of people, right? Even if they're not personally religious, they say, hey, it can do good for a lot of people. It's good it exists. People do a lot of charity, And so for most people, I think they see religious beliefs as a net positive thing, right?
Yeah, when it's at its purest form, yeah.
But
and it's usually, but it was when I was in this church in Columbus. So I lived in Columbus for 3 years, and then I moved to a different city in Athens, Ohio.
Okay.
That's where I worked at the brewery.
Okay. Shout out. Who?
But
what's the brewery called?
Jackie O's.
Jackie O's.
But there was this a young church. It was mostly college and high school kids, and it was really big. It was 1,500, 2,000 people, and it was very high commitment, and it was almost borderline cold, and there was the way that they treated mental illness was when you tell someone who's clinically depressed or clinically bipolar or whatever mental illness they have, hey, I think it's just because you're not trusting God enough.
Fuck.
It just this is a vicious cycle.
Yeah. You mean someone who's clearly they have issues.
Who needs to be medicated or
yeah. Or they need help. They need legit help.
And then either telling them they don't trust God enough, or saying that, oh, it's Satan talking to you, Satan's taking a hold of you. You don't tell that to someone who's chemically imbalanced, who's really trying to.
It's irresponsible. It's literally irresponsible to.
And it's
because you're saying, even as a friend, if you're just simply friends with them and nothing else, you can maybe even help them a lot just that way, just giving them some company, someone to talk to, someone to even nothing else, even you're not shuttling them around to doctors or anything, but just
it's just a vicious cycle, because it's you telling this person who's already feeling really fucking low that they're not good enough, or they're not trying hard enough, which I'm sure that if you're clinically ill, mentally ill, you're trying your damn hardest to work through it, and then telling them you're just not doing this well enough, and you also don't truly believe in God's grace because you're going through
this. And that's
the
reason you're being cursed or something.
Yeah, or
you're not being saved because of your lack of faith.
Well, you're saved. You're just this is why you're having a hard time. It's because you're not trying hard enough.
Interesting. And man, that sounds really shitty. I've never seen that before. I've never seen anyone say that.
I've seen that in a lot of Christian circles.
The one memory I have in church that I think about sometimes, about mental illness, I have literally one memory, which is there was I went to a Baptist church as a kid.
Yeah.
So my parents, they took us to a lot of different kinds of churches, right?
Yeah.
Just based on the city, they just shopped around until they found one that they just connected with, but not denominational specifically, right? So it was a Baptist church, and so people are into like casting demons out, and they do some dancing, and their hands in the air. And my dad explained to me very simply, like sometimes if there's like demons inside of you and you get too close to like God's light, like they'll be scared and this kind of thing, Which at the time I just took it all on face value, I just accepted what he was saying, but in hindsight, like that's like grossly irresponsible. He could have died,
Yeah, and even like some things are like, oh, this is another thing that's like more recent development, and it's kind of in the same terms where it's like there's like the whole like the call to like once every people group in the world hear about God or something like that,
okay,
that means the end times will come, and like people are trying to push that. So there's like these missionaries who like are like we talked about earlier about like the hardcore like let's go up to the mountains, let's like fly this plane or like take this and just get to this place and like
learn some local languages and stuff, like stay there for a long time.
But they go into these regions and they bring diseases and they like wipe out.
Oh, for real?
Have you not heard about like?
I mean, I know that's what like Europe just did with the whole world, but you're saying I guess Christian or missionaries did a lot of that. You're saying?
Yeah. Well, even recently, there's this guy who like was like, my calling is to go to this untouched Amazon tribe.
Okay.
And I need to tell them about God.
Oh God! And now we know how this ends. Yeah.
And
shit.
We know how this ends. Or there's this other time.
Oh wait, so he brought disease and like.
Well, he got killed. Like they killed him.
There was a guy like 2 years ago. There's like a tiny Indian island that's so far.
Yeah.
Like every time someone like gets near it, they attack it. They like throw spears and like shoot it. And so like they're just extremely hostile. No one gets anywhere near it.
Well, and also like even if they like were able to get in, like those people have been like the development of like diseases or like viruses, like
they have no immune system.
They don't have any immune system.
Yeah.
Or there was this other story about this girl who felt a really good big calling and had this big support for like taking care of like premature babies in Africa.
Okay.
And
sounds good.
It sounds great, and she was like so convinced, but like she was not prepared. She's like, I have this calling, I'm gonna do this now.
And she was not. She had no medical training.
They were like,
ticket.
Then like some people who like interned for her, or, like did some work for her. They're like, I think more babies are dying in this clinic than.
Was she a doctor?
No.
What the fuck?
And in this clinic, than if they were at like an actual hospital or like they waited because there's just like the lack of care. But it was like these people like really like in their heart, I believe that they're doing something like that they really believe in they're doing, but like
they really want to help. They really want to help.
Yeah, but it's doing a lot of harm.
And do you so this is where I might disagree with you. I think there's a lot of idiots. I think there's a lot I think there's just a lot of stupid people, and maybe even hostile people or vicious people, people who might be too into groupthink, people who aren't open-minded enough, people just full of hate, people who have a million different problems. But I wonder how much religion makes that worse.
I wonder how much it is like
because this crazy bitch
from
could
like
just maybe she's a nice lady who wants to help and is also an idiot.
But I also think that might be like part of like being separated. Like there's this, I think it happens more like it's like being so separated from the real world that like you truly like the echo chambers make you truly believe that like
that does make a lot of sense, because if there's a different idiot with no medical training who wants to go help premature babies in Africa, maybe if she wasn't in an echo chamber, someone would say to her like, dude, like you can't do that. Like join a charity where people know what's happening. You can't actually do that. Whereas if you have people around you who just you felt the calling of God, it's a beautiful thing. People are giving you money, supporting you.
Well, yeah, it's and it's like, and then there's this other thing about like, Christianity is like a unique religion in the way that it's very much like supposedly like, it is like in its purest form like grace focused. Like you don't have to do anything to achieve acceptance. You just have to believe it.
Okay.
But the structures that are in place will preach that, but then the structures themselves won't.
They won't act that way.
Reflect that.
Like you're talking about like people who have like mental diseases and they're being judged.
Yeah. And they're like, no, it's like God's grace, but then like the structures, it's like, oh, you work your way up, or oh, be able to have these responsibilities, or to be able to like.
No, I mean I think it's way more basic than that. I mean, there's a lot of religious people who are very judgmental.
Yeah, and
I will say that there's a lot of Christian people who are very judgmental.
And then I think it's like more harmful than for the people who actually believe than the people who don't believe, because then there's this dissonance that comes up where it's like you're told that like, hey, you are supposed to be accepted and loved regardless, no matter what. But now here are all these ladders and hoops and things that you have to work through to be accepted in the structure that's...
Isaac, I wonder, entertain this idea. Like, you have some amount of passion about how Christianity is not a great religion or can have a lot of bad effects. I wonder if you have kind of a narrow view of what Christianity's actual effect on people or on like society or communities is. It must be mostly positive, yes?
Well, yeah, no,
like overwhelmingly positive.
If I were to like,
if you're like, yeah.
If I were to like be that, I would reject that like the way that I believe what I believe is not because of my background, but I know that like the way that I treat other people is because of like the lessons I've learned or like the people I've met who are Christian, who are like in the faith, and what I read in the Bible, like.
So you see a lot of good in the community and in the people and in the religion and the Bible.
Well, one of my favorite things to do, like I don't go to church anymore, but I do go when my parents lead church in their house.
That sounds really cool.
Because like these are just people, it's like what, like 10, 15 people.
That sounds really
They're not forced to go, they don't feel obligated, they just want to be together, they just want to hang out.
Yeah.
Someone's playing guitar really badly. They're all singing off tune.
But passionately.
But passionately, and they're all like ready and willing to learn.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think that's like, I love going there because it's like in its purest form. It's like these are people who are affected by this so much, and there's not like these structures that harm people. There's just these people who just like feel so led to do this, and they're going to do it, and they're going to come together in this living room and do this, and do it the best they can because this is their form of worship. And there's no like fucking like worship team with like fucking strobe lights and
rock guitar, drummer,
really insanely produced like intro videos to whoever's gonna speak or whatever. It's just like in its purest form. It's just like people are here because they want to be here, and there's.
It sounds like your parents are really cool.
I like them a lot more after I graduated high school than.
Because you were living with them, I think it's always hard.
And
there's some friction when you're
as a
living with
pastor's kids, they're like they have some sort of like expectation of like how other people see you. But like after I left, I was like, wow, they're fucking badass. Yeah.
Dude, I think I almost every time I hear about someone's family, I appreciate my parents more.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of shit parents out there, or parents that just are not around, or like they're dead, or like there's like a lot of people have like really crazy family situations.
Yeah.
I've always thought mine was crazy, but the more I talk to people, the more I think mine's fine. It's like really pretty good, actually.
Well, because one of the hardest conversations I had with my parents was like, I was like, hey, I'm gonna talk to you.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, I really don't think I believe in God anymore. Here are the reasons.
How old were you?
25.
Okay.
I did that when I was like 20.
Okay.
21. And then they started crying. My dad said, hell is a really long time.
Oh. Sure, what else is he gonna say?
And then it was just like, oh shit. And then,
so it took them by surprise, they didn't know.
I feel like they should have known it was coming, but
there's a lot of denial, man. Denial's strong.
But like 2 weeks after, like I talked to my parents on Skype again, and they were just like, hey, we can tell that like you care about other people. You can tell that you have a good head on your shoulders, and you don't take advantage of people, and you're like, and we think that like you'll figure something out. You'll figure it out, and we're confident and comfortable that you will.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Have you ever had a conversation about that after that? Like about Christianity after that?
Only sometimes because
it's probably kind of an awkward conversation to have.
Just because my parents will like my dad, I think, will always be like, hey, I think you should really go like to church so you can find like a real
community. Like a girl?
Sometimes a girl. Sometimes it's like, I just want you to find a community of like really strong men who you guys can just talk about God together, and just real friends.
Oh wait, what reference does he have? Like he met other friends of yours, and he's like.
Well, no reference.
Looks down on your other strong male friends.
No reference at all. Like
okay.
He just thinks that like. And I was like, and one day I just kind of, after like a year, 2 or 3 years of him just saying that, I was just like, hey Dad, can you please stop saying that, because it feels really invalidating because of the effort and like.
If it was coming from anywhere other than your dad, it'd be straight up insulting. If I told you, look, Isaac, like your friends, I don't know about them. I got this other place you can meet some guys.
And my dad's never met my friends, and I was like, I have really close friends too that I can be like really strong and intimate and talk about.
Yeah.
And there's better friends than I had when I was in church. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And when you say this, I know that you're coming from a good place in your heart and you want what's best for me, but like low key, like it hurts me because you're saying that like the investments I've made in other people aren't as good as they can be or aren't worth it.
And his opinion also means something to you.
Yeah.
Even if you don't agree with it, but it means something to you.
Yeah, and we had a good conversation about that, but I was just like, it just really sucked to hear this all the time of just being like, oh, since you don't have friends at church or you're not going to church, then your friends aren't good enough or not good influences or something like that.
I want to run something else by you. Taiwan Christians versus American Christians. I think a lot of the critiques and problems that you have about Christians, I have the same issue with the Christianity that I grew up with. Like I resonate with everything you're saying, but which was in the States, in America, right?
Yeah.
So coming to China, there's not really a whole lot of openly religious people there, but in Taiwan, there's many religious people here, right? They're Buddhist or Taoist or some mix or Christian essentially. I don't know. I knew actually a lot of Muslims in China. They had the same kind of issues. Some of them were a little bit too into it. You know, they'd like always be proselytizing to you. But in any case, the Taiwan Christians, Taiwan religious people, for them it's a very private experience, or for more local religions it's a family or a community event. But I've in the 3.5 years that I've been in Taiwan, I had one white guy on the subway one time hand me a tract, sit down next to me and hand me a tract, right? That's it. I've never had a Taiwanese person, a friend or otherwise, like try to like rope me into anything, right? Well, which might be common in other cultures.
I think it's interesting because like, I think we talked about this earlier about like how a lot of Christians are like upper middle class, and they kind of like fall into like kind of the same like affluent American Christians that you would see in the States, where like they like are churchgoers but like very capitalist, very
sure.
But then some of them are just like, you know, that like their heart's in it, because like for someone to like, this is where I also feel like weird, because it's like,
if you're going to church every week, you're into it. For whatever reason, you're into it.
No, but because they have to give up a lot to be able to like say that they are Christian, because in Taiwan there's a lot of like folk religion and ancestor worship, and basically when you tell your parents, when you tell your parents,
so
like,
for a lot of people, if you're going against the grain,
Taiwanese, no, a lot.
Because I know a lot. Most of my Christian friends, their families are Christian. That's why.
Well, if you're like a first generation.
First generation Christian, yeah.
Because you have to tell your parents, like, hey, I don't believe in folk religion anymore. I don't believe in going to the temple to pay respects.
Because you got to stop doing that, right? You got to stop like tomb sweeping day. You got to stop like Chinese New Year. You got to stop like pray, right? Because that's a big part of Christianity is you got to stop all that stuff, right? You can't go to pray and burn stuff at the temple.
Well, I've had some friends who were like, I still do that because it's like my culture.
It is.
But there's some of them where it's like, when they tell their parents who still believe in ancestor worship, they're basically telling, the parents will like see it in a way that's like, I'm not going to be taken care of when I die, because you pass it down to generation of like people like giving them paper money or like offerings or all these things. And so to be able to like go to your parents and be like, hey, I'm a Christian now. For the parents, it sounds like, hey, I'm not going to be taking care of you when you die, after you die, in the afterlife.
So I don't think I have any friends, not that I can think of immediately, who literally believe in spirit worship, literally, right? They definitely do the ceremonies and they go through the motions and they'll show up at temple. But most of them are, like going to church every Easter. They'll go to temple on Chinese New Year, maybe a couple other times.
Yeah. No, but
have you met people who in their heart believe in spirit worship?
Well, it's
believe
more so
like literal things?
In the off chance that like they're wrong.
Yeah. The consequences are
the
grave.
Consequences are crazy. Like,
yeah.
And I think people do honestly believe that, but also I think that like even if you don't completely believe it, you're also like, dude, if I had gotten this wrong, like I just would have just like fucked over my family. Like
it would be really fucked up for your family. That's true. A little bit. It would be.
And that's another thing where.
And even if it's not, if you're wrong or not, but giving up your tradition, giving up like your family local culture, that's a huge thing. I mean, for them to tell them that they converted to Christianity at the expense of going to temple is like as bad or worse than you telling your parents, I'm not a Christian anymore, I don't believe in that anymore.
Well, and that's why I think
right?
that, like, and that's why I also like kind of believe that like
to Jesus.
To Jesus. I respect my parents and their approach because and a part of me is like missionary work is inherently colonial. It's when Western nations wanted to like
I never think about
take over like these certain countries, they would first send in their missionaries and then they would like warm up to the idea and then they would come over. And because now their religious beliefs fit more with the Western like the nation that just take over, then they are more okay with like that. And I think that like in its history, like missionary work is really, really colonial, and which is why like I'm very sensitive to like people who are proselytizing, because they're like, give up all your traditions, give up all your culture, give up all these things. Now you're this, and you're gonna fit it in this certain tradition that is not yours. And I just like, and I think that like that's dangerous, because that's just like whitewashing. Like complete.
Do you have any do you have any doubt in your mind that maybe Christianity is real and maybe you're going to go to hell?
Oh yeah, but then
is there a small part of you? Is there a tiny part of you that's there, right?
Absolutely. And in my mind, I'm like, all right, well, if I'm trying to figure out this perfect being and I don't understand this perfect being, then once I'm at the end of it, if this being is perfect, then I'm not gonna be upset with their decision they make with me.
You have this feeling like sometimes like when you're in like a very good mood that like everything is perfect, like the universe is already perfect, everything is fine, or like the wars and the killing and the disease, like everything's really exactly how it should be.
But no, I'm saying like if there is a perfect being out there, then I think like once I get to them and then like they make that decision, they're like, all right, this is where you're gonna go, and then I'll be like, oh, all right, I get it.
You mean you'd accept it? You'd accept
I accept it, like their decision to me, like if this is all knowing, all.
If it's like a heaven hell kind of a thing, right? Kind of like Christian heaven hell kind of a deal where you get like the golden gates and all that.
Yeah, I mean.
You'd be okay, like dude, like sorry, but you'd be like okay, that's chill.
Well, then I would be like, yeah, well, you should have definitely like made this easier for us.
Tell us, start a YouTube channel, dude.
You should have definitely made this easier for us if this was the cusp of how I was gonna believe in this. Oh, that was another thing.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like hard to grasp, right? It should be something simple, like everyone can.
Another doubt that I had was like, how can such an infinite decision be decided in such a finite amount of time?
Oh, you mean like a single lifetime?
Yeah.
Sure.
Especially when like the single lifetime for every human being is so different.
Yeah, you can live to be 5.
And I'm just like.
And for like Catholicism, what like aborted fetuses, they go to heaven. Children, I don't know when did I think you get.
Well, that's.
I think you get baptized, right, and then you have the chance to go to hell. So I think kids can still go to hell. I think like 5-year-olds can still go to hell.
Well, I know the Muslim faith.
Yeah.
Children are born perfect.
They're born perfect.
Yeah.
And then you have to like fuck up to. They also have a hell heaven kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they believe that children are born perfect.
That's cool. I don't know if it's true, but it's cool.
And then the world around them is what influences them to be like flawed. But yeah, that was another thing. It was just like, how can such a like limited like, and then that was another thing. Like, how can such a limited experience define something so damning? Where it's like, I've met people and I've heard experiences of people who like, I'm like, I understand why you would outright reject God or Christianity or the God of Christianity or outright reject anything because of the way that your personal experiences have like led your life. Like, and who am I to say like, and that's another thing where I was like, yeah, no, like someone would be like, yeah, this is why I don't believe it. Like while I was so Christian, I was like, this is why people don't believe it. I was like, yeah, I get it.
Like
I'm sorry that I was.
You didn't try to put up a bunch of arguments about it. You were like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like yeah, that makes sense. Like yeah, and for me it was like because I had my parents were decent and I've had in the past like some fulfilling experience with Christianity. I'm like I wish other people could see this concept of God the way that I saw God, but that's not true. That's never gonna happen. And I understand why people would reject God. And that's so stupid that it's either this or that, heaven or hell, or yes or no. And when human life is so much more complex than that.
Dude, it's crazy complex, man. And there's a lot of pieces, many pieces. Isaac, we got like 5 minutes left, literally at my memory card, so like no choice. Yeah. Can I do a speed round of questions about this the podcast is about living abroad. Okay. Which you're obviously like a great case in point. We talk about a lot of like really good stuff. But we're talking a lot about. I just need the speed round of stock questions. Okay.
Okay.
All right. What kind of Taiwanese person would like to move to America? So you have experience in both countries. Obviously, like you're very much mixed. What kind of Taiwanese person would like to go to America?
I think the wages in Taiwan are pretty stagnant. So like freshly out of school or like college students
who are looking to like get ahead in the world, kind of.
Yeah. Definitely, I think that's a big.
By the way, I've never asked this question before because I don't interview Taiwanese people. I only interview foreign people. You're the person to ask if I'm going to ask someone, right?
Yeah, mostly it's like high school, college.
And the reason this actually like in hindsight is kind of a silly question is like Taiwan is like very intimately connected to America. So like if people like are gonna make that move, they already know about that move. They already know their reasons. They already like have their path. There's no Taiwanese people like I'm not sure. Maybe should I? Maybe not.
Yeah. Well.
So people, how about China versus? Have you been to China? Okay.
No.
But for America, cool. Looking to get ahead.
And there's a lot of like skilled workers in Taiwan that they're just like I could probably make more. And
there's a ton of engineers here, an incredible amount of engineers here, and the wages for most engineers is low.
Yeah.
Right. For some it's high, but for few, right?
Yeah.
In America, there's huge demand. There's huge demand and very high wages, but you can't get a visa, man. Like it's next to impossible to get an H-1B visa. So.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough, if you got connections or passport or something, if you can. What kind of American people do you think would love to come or would like to live here? Would enjoy life here in Taiwan?
I don't know if I would be the best person to ask that question because like.
True, but your answer will be interesting. Whatever you say, it'll be an interesting answer because we have a lot of counterpoints, right? So.
Because for me it's like, I came to Taiwan because I was like I'm going home. Taiwan
feels like home to you more than the States, yes?
Yeah, because I've spent my whole life there. So like for me it wasn't like going to the U.S. was my experience.
Yeah, that was traveling abroad.
And now it's coming back to home, and so like when people are like, "What brought you here?" I'm like, just trying to see my parents and just trying to reclaim this part of my.
So you've been back for like a couple years after college?
No, it's been less than a year.
Less than a year after college. Yeah. Okay, right on. How's it been so far? So you spent 4 years in the States or how long?
Well,
4 or 5 years.
6.
6 years in the States.
Yeah.
What's it like coming back? Must be kind of crazy, right?
Well, my identity's changed so much. Like
yeah, sure.
From when I was like 17, 18
the
years
age
old.
and the being abroad, both, and specifically being in America. If there's one place that's going to change you, it's probably America.
Going back to what we talked about, like leaving the church too, like.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. But yeah, type of people who live in Taiwan.
So you have a lot of reasons that you have changed a lot in the last 6 years. Yeah.
Back to Taiwan for American, like Westerners, I think they just be like, it's very convenient. Like, price-wise, trying to get to like, it's a small island, but like it feels really, really big. And public transportation, different environments.
Throughout almost the entire island, by the way, public transportation,
yeah.
Not in the city even, but like across almost the whole island.
Like you want to go to the beach, sure, day trip. You want to go to the mountains, day trip. You want to go camping, weekend trip. Like, you never have to really worry about how to get to a place as long as you know what place you're trying to get to.
Yeah. If your time isn't super valuable, there's no reason you shouldn't need a car.
So if you like food and outdoors, like.
I think outdoors is a huge one, man. I think honestly, I'm not a big fan of Taiwanese food, but the outdoors is like the reason I came here. That's the reason I moved here. Is because of the nature here.
And yeah, if you like the outdoors, if you like the people are hospitable. Like if you make an effort to like, make this your home, then people will reciprocate that.
I would say, especially on that point, there's some people say Taiwanese people are all nice. I don't think that's quite true, but there's very few assholes here. Mm-hmm. Like even maybe people are more neutral or they don't really care about you. For most people, it's not like I mean, people are very friendly, of course, but mostly they're neutral and they don't care about you because they have their own lives, right? But there's very few bad people here.
That's why I was trying to say that, like, if you make it your home, then they'll like reciprocate that. Mm-hmm. Because like there are a lot of foreigners, like students or like people who are like here,
transients,
who just like it's their playground, and like Taiwanese people like see right through that, and they're like, you're not like contributing to anything here, and we're not gonna give you a time of day. But like if you're like learning the language or like really feel like you are comfortable here and belong here, then like. Yeah.
By the way, to the transients also, people are quite friendly. Like it's not like to like students or whatever. People are curious and interested.
Yeah.
People really take care of their neighbors.
Next question.
Okay. I think that's maybe it. Where else do you want to go, if anywhere? In the world, as in other countries. Anything else?
Other countries.
Yeah.
Well, I want to visit more of the big cities in the States.
Okay.
I kind of want to live in a big city in the States.
There's a lot of cities.
Like either like Pittsburgh, Detroit, or New York City.
Right on. Wait, what the fuck? Are you from Ohio? I'll ask about that later. I'm not curious now. Pittsburgh,
Detroit.
Dude, I'm from Michigan. Super cool.
New York City.
Detroit has a horrible reputation, but I've visited there a few times, like in recent years. It's super cool.
Yeah.
It's super like if you're trying to not have too hard of a life, like in terms of like prices and all that, like. But there's like really like big industries in some places. I'm just saying you can buy houses. Yeah. It's like a great place to invest in real estate because the city is on the up and up. It hit rock bottom some years ago, and so it's not like it's not perfect, but it's on the up and up.
My dad's side of the family is like very rough, like working class Midwesterners. So
there's no working class jobs in Detroit, but
it's like just like that history, like that.
Yeah. It's a cool place. I before I visited, I thought it was probably a shithole, which it is in some parts, but it's a really cool place.
And Chicago.
And New York.
Chicago too.
Chicago would be on my short list, man. That'd be on my short list to go.
Yeah. And
not Detroit, probably. Definitely not anywhere in Ohio. Dude, we'll talk about that later. Fuck Ohio.
I mean, probably.
What's good about tell me one thing. Okay, we got like 45 seconds. Tell me 2 good things about Ohio.
If you find the right people, there are people to keep.
In every place. What else?
It doesn't have a lot going for it, so people make it happen.
Oh, you mean there's some kind of value to living in kind of a shithole?
They gotta make do with what they have, and they do a really good job doing it.
So you can see like ingenuity, creativity.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's there's something that makes really nice places make people soft a little bit.
And they just really like try very hard to like make it a place.
Shout out to Chicago, to Ohio. I meet people from Ohio sometimes, and this is like my real honest opinion. I've never been somewhere in Ohio that I liked. I think it's all horrible. But some people say different, if they're from there. So I try to keep an open mind, but I've been there a few times. I don't like it.
Yeah, and I think that's like the thing about it is like because it's like because it's like mediocrity.
It's so because there's like 5 or 6 like mid like decent sized cities. They're all awful, all of them.
Oh. I live in Athens. If you could visit, you should go to Athens, Ohio.
Athens, okay.
Especially if you like beer.
It's a college town.
Yeah.
There's some, of course, college towns are an exception.
Right? This is a special place.
Okay, that's cool. What's the university?
Ohio University.
Ohio University. Okay, cool. Athens. Okay, right on.
But no, it's like people. It just like in the mediocrity, like the ingenuity you were talking about, like they. Yeah. Are able to like create something that you like would never imagine.
To be fair, in a college town, man.
But not in Athens, just like Cleveland or Columbus.
All right, we'll keep chatting. We got to take some B-roll after this, so hopefully I have. Yeah, I've got. Oh no, I think it stopped. I think we're done. Might have a tiny bit of time. Anything left to say to the people, Mr. Isaac?
Stay classy.
Right on, right on. Adios.